Let me take you to a sidewalk in downtown Detroit, where a single spilled cup of coffee shattered the illusion of justice. One man in uniform, drunk on power. One young black man, tired of swallowing his pride. And one camera phone that turned a quiet act of violence into a national reckoning. This isn't just a courtroom drama. It's a story about how truth fights its way through silence. About how one man inside the system chose to break it from within. If you think you've seen justice before, think again, because this time, it doesn't raise its voice. It holds its ground. Garrett Sloan stood on the corner of Woodward Avenue like a statue carved from the stone of authority. His uniform was spotless, his posture military, straight. And behind his mirrored sunglasses, his eyes scanned the crowd like searchlights in a prison yard. He didn't need to speak. His presence alone parted the foot traffic like a blade through fabric. A mother crossed the street just to avoid him, pulling her daughter along without looking back. In his mind, the law wasn't something you followed, it was something you feared. They don't follow the law, they follow fear. Just then, Malik Henderson stepped off the curb. Shirt tucked in, documents under one arm, eyes on the clock. He was late for a job interview. Focused, respectable, until a nudge in the wrong direction sent his coffee cup flying, dark liquid splashing across Sloan's polished boots. "I'm really sorry, sir," Malik stammered, already reaching into his pocket for napkins. But Sloan didn't want an apology. He wanted a target. "Watch where you're going, boy," he sneered, loud enough for the sidewalk to freeze. Malik blinked. His spine stiffened. There it was. That word. The poison wrapped in politeness. The curse of history in one syllable. But he said nothing. He just stood still, wounded only in dignity. Sloan didn't hesitate. With a shove, he sent Malik to the pavement. The cuffs came out. Metal clicked around wrists that hadn't lifted a hand. People stopped. Watched. No one moved. Except one woman. She pulled out her phone and pressed record. The video hit the internet before Malik's fingerprints had dried at the station. A few seconds of injustice was all it took. #Justice for Malik. Outrage poured in. Commentators demanded answers. In a modest Detroit kitchen, Samuel and Diane Henderson watched it unfold. Diane's eyes welled as the cuffs snapped on screen. Samuel didn't speak. He simply placed a steady hand on her shoulder and picked up the phone. "We'll go to court," he said quietly, not with anger, with resolve. And so, the line had been crossed, and the world would now have to answer. The line outside Wayne County Courthouse stretched around the block. Protest signs waved under cloudy skies. "Justice for Malik. Silence is violence." Reporters murmured into cameras while security tried to keep the tension from boiling over. Inside, Malik Henderson adjusted the collar of his thrift store suit. It didn't fit perfectly, but he wore it like armor. He stepped into the courtroom with steady breath and eyes forward, even as every seat turned toward him like a spotlight. Garrett Sloan entered moments later, flanked by uniformed officers who nodded at him with reverence. He moved like he belonged here, not just in the courthouse but above it. His face carried the smirk of a man who'd never been told no in his life. Samuel and Diane Henderson sat behind their son. Samuel's hand rested calmly on Malik's shoulder. Diane held Malik's hand so tightly, her knuckles whitened, but her gaze never dropped. They didn't raise their voices. Their presence was their protest. Across the aisle, cameras clicked, as if trying to capture something more than just images. Truth, maybe, or the weight of injustice that hung thick in the air. Judge Raymond Tulliver presided with a practiced neutrality that felt like theater. When Malik's attorney began his opening argument, the judge interrupted within seconds. "Please stay on procedure," he said, setting the tone. Garrett's legal team, however, was allowed to describe him as a decorated officer and a steady presence in volatile times. Without pushback. Garrett reclined slightly in his chair, lips curling in mild boredom as Malik's lawyer tried to speak. It wasn't overt, but everyone felt it. The weight of a system leaning too far in one direction. Then came the moment that pierced the performance. Asked to explain his use of force, Garrett leaned forward, cleared his throat, and said, "Guys like him always push the line." Gasps. Audible shock. Diane rose halfway out of her seat, lips trembling, but Samuel reached out, quietly pulling her hand back down. Nothing more was said. Nothing had to be. That sentence, chilling, racist, unapologetic, cut through every lie dressed in legalese. It was the truth behind the badge, and now it was on record. The courtroom had gone silent, not with peace, but with the heavy weight of resignation. The air felt thinner, like everyone had been holding their breath too long and no one dared to exhale. Malik sat motionless at the defense table, fingers laced so tightly his knuckles blanched. Sweat beaded in his palms, cold against his skin. Diane Henderson gripped her husband's hand beneath the bench. Her eyes weren't wet from tears. They were dulled by a creeping sense of despair. Across the aisle, Garrett Sloan remained in perfect posture, jaw relaxed, eyes dancing over the crowd like a lion surveying prey. The smirk on his lips wasn't just confident, it was taunting. Then the double doors creaked open. Every head turned. In stepped a black man in his 50s, dressed in a slate gray suit that said more about him than any badge ever could. He didn't rush, he didn't bow. His walk was quiet but resolute, and something about his presence shifted the energy in the room. Malik's eyes widened slightly, recognition breaking through the fog. Elias Monroe, former federal investigator, known for tearing down corrupt precincts from the inside out, a man who spoke little but moved mountains. Elias didn't speak immediately. He simply stopped at the end of the aisle and met Malik's gaze. There was no smile, no nod, just a steady, grounding look. And in that look was a message as clear as any spoken word. "You're not alone. Don't fold." Then he stepped forward. "Your Honor," Elias said, voice firm, unshaken. "I'm Inspector Elias Monroe with the Department of Justice. Officer Garrett Sloan is currently under internal investigation for repeated misconduct and falsification of reports." He opened a thick folder, page by page, number by number. Exhibit A-19, Citizen Complaints. Exhibit B-3, Disciplinary Warnings Erased from Precinct Records. Exhibit C, a video, time-stamped and geotagged, showing Officer Sloan using excessive force on a civilian in Latin Town. Gasps rippled across the gallery. The judge's gavel pounded once for silence. Sloan leapt from his seat, face red, fists trembling. "This is an ambush!" Elias didn't flinch. Judge Tulliver slammed the gavel again, louder this time. "Order in the court!" Garrett stepped back, visibly shaken. The mask cracked. For the first time, the untouchable had been touched, and the court knew it. Elias Monroe stepped forward with quiet command. "Your Honor, I request the courtroom monitor be activated." A silent nod from Judge Tulliver, and the screen flickered to life. The footage began with shaky phone video, grainy but unmistakable. Garrett Sloan, out of uniform, stood in a dim alley behind a row of closed shops. His fist connected brutally with the jaw of a young Latino man. No badge, no warning, just violence. No body cams were there, no patrol logs. But someone had seen, and someone had filmed. Gasps rippled across the gallery. Elias didn't look back. He placed another stack of files on the table. Internal witness statements, previously suppressed, now marked with timestamps and clearance seals. Pages rustled like wind through dry leaves. Every sheet carried a story the department had tried to bury. The room held its breath. Then came the quiet click of a door opening. Two DOJ agents in dark suits stepped in from the rear of the courtroom. The shift in energy was immediate, like the atmosphere had thickened. Garrett Sloan stood slowly, face pale but defiant. "This is a setup," he roared. "I am the law." The lead agent read aloud. "Officer Garrett Sloan, by the authority of the Department of Justice, you are hereby suspended from duty and placed under federal investigation for misconduct and abuse of power." The cuffs clicked shut, metallic and final. Flashes from press cameras popped like gunfire. Sloan's shoulders sagged. The badge that once gleamed on his chest was gone. Now he wore shackles. A retired officer, gray-haired and weathered, stood up in the gallery. Tears streamed down his cheeks. "I served with him," he said softly, before bowing his head. Diane Henderson wiped her face but didn't sob. Samuel placed a calm hand on Malik's shoulder, eyes locked forward. Malik breathed deep. His chest rose and fell slowly, not in pride, but in survival. He didn't smile. He didn't cry. He simply endured. Sloan was led out, shouting no longer. Before leaving, Elias turned. He gave Malik a small nod, subtle, solemn. Across the courtroom, Judge Tulliver sat motionless, lips parted slightly, like a man jolted awake in the middle of a long, comfortable dream. Justice hadn't yelled. It had simply arrived. The federal courthouse in Detroit stood under a gray morning sky, the clouds hanging low as if echoing the gravity of the day. Inside, the courtroom was hushed, expectant, not with chaos, but with something heavier, reckoning. Garrett Sloan entered through the side door, wrists cuffed, clad in a gray prison jumpsuit. His head had been shaved, his stance uncertain. The once commanding presence now looked brittle, drained of its bravado. No one called him sir. No one saluted. He walked like a man carrying his own collapse. Malik Henderson sat in the front row beside his parents. He didn't smirk, didn't flinch. His expression held only quiet resolution. Diane held Samuel's hand tightly. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. One by one, the witnesses rose. A high school teacher told of a day when Sloan stormed into her classroom, forced a young black student to empty his backpack in front of his peers, without cause. Her voice cracked as she recalled the humiliation etched on that child's face. A middle-aged Uber driver, eyes downcast but voice firm, described the slap Sloan had given him for not pulling over fast enough on a routine stop. Then came a college freshman, nervously clutching a folded paper. His voice shook as he recalled nearly losing his scholarship after Sloan's false accusation had marred his school record. "That report could have ruined everything," he said. "But today, I'm still here." No yelling, no dramatics, just the steady rhythm of truth being spoken, each story cutting deeper than any outburst ever could. Elias Monroe remained seated in the back, silent, but his presence filled the room. He didn't need to speak. His being there was enough. The judge cleared his throat, the room still as stone. "Garrett Sloan," he said with measured finality, "you are hereby sentenced to 7 years in federal prison." The gavel struck once, hard, decisive. No applause followed, only exhalations, nods, closure. Garrett's shoulders collapsed inward. He sobbed, raw and unfiltered. "I can change," he whimpered. "Please, I'm sorry." No one moved. Elias rose. He turned slowly and walked away, each step deliberate, carrying not just his own weight, but the burden of every silence he'd chosen to break. And this time, no one dared stop him. The headlines hit every screen across the country before dawn broke. "This? Listen, shout." He stood. Justice didn't scream, it whispered. From CNN to Channel 8 to MSNBC, the coverage wasn't loud, it was reverent. Social media erupted not in chaos, but clarity, truth, in silence. Ellison justice. These weren't just hashtags, they were declarations, carved into timelines like etchings in stone. Opinion pieces flooded in, calling Inspector Elias Monroe a different kind of hero. Not the kind who kicked down doors, but the kind who stood quietly in them, until truth had no choice but to walk through. Inside Wayne County Courthouse, the air felt different now, lighter somehow. In a long corridor of marble and glass, Elias walked slowly, his steps unhurried beneath the fading gold of afternoon light. No microphones were shoved in his face. No camera flashes burst. Yet everyone stopped. A young officer near the exit straightened instinctively, raising his hand in a crisp salute. His eyes shimmered, not with fear, with something deeper, respect, gratitude. Elias simply nodded, the gesture saying everything words couldn't. In a high school classroom across Detroit, the future was already watching. The lights dimmed as the teacher played a clip from the courtroom. Sloan in cuffs, the silence in the room louder than any protest. The teacher turned to the class. Jalen, she asked softly, what did you take from that day? Jalen, older now but unmistakable, sat at the edge of his desk, posture calm. He didn't hesitate. Justice sometimes whispers, he said, but when it does, the world listens. The room held still. The students didn't clap. They didn't need to. Their eyes said enough. Outside, the sun dipped low over the Detroit skyline. Elias crossed the street alone, his shadow long behind him. No chants, no applause. But the people who passed him, many paused, some simply nodded. One placed a hand on her heart. The final frame faded to black, the words appearing one by one. Some systems don't collapse in noise, they crumble when silence finally speaks. And for a nation that had grown too familiar with shouting, the quiet had never sounded more powerful. Sometimes the greatest shift doesn't come with shouting or spectacle. It comes in silence, the kind that breaks cycles, that humbles power, that restores what was stolen, not with vengeance, but with truth. When the system turns its face from those it should protect, it takes just one moment, one person, to make it look back. Justice may stumble, it may take time, but it listens. And when it finally speaks, it doesn't echo in courtrooms. It lives in classrooms, sidewalks, and the quiet strength of those who refuse to bow. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, if it made you think or feel, share your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow our channel for more powerful stories that matter, because the truth doesn't need to shout, but it always deserves to be heard.